I live with that guy. And we ask him, so are you all ready for offering? He's like, I haven't heard anything yet. I'm like, okay, well, it's Friday. And I come in from working, and he's like, I sent my title and focus off. God said what to say. We're waiting to say what God wants to say. We're staying in the upper room. We're counting up. We're in anticipation of what He wants to say. I didn't make a promise that I wasn't going to cry today. I've been crying since yesterday, but anyway. I have a word that I want to share with you today. And I have some funny things that we can talk about on the way to hearing that. One thing was, I was also saying, God, what do you want to say? Because it's Friday. And so I decided, well, I'm going to take a shower, and then I'm going to go sit at my desk. And a couple minutes later, I said, honey, can you write this down for me? I don't have a pen and paper with me right now. Because I was in the shower. It's like, thank you, God, for waiting till I was in the one place. And I'm like, and if I don't write this down, I'm going to forget it. So God may not speak in the most convenient moments, but we have to know when He's talking. Amen. And so my title today is What Faithfulness Affords. I don't know if it's grammatically correct. I don't know. I was in the shower. It's what I heard, right? We're going to dive into this story and some things here in the Word. My focus today is requests God honors. How many has a Bible today? Yes. Say this with me. I have a Bible. I have a Bible. I have my Bible. I have my Bible. I desire to hear the Word. And I want it to become alive to me today. I was test driving that one. You like that? I might keep them. That's it. There was this boy, and him and his dad were working together. And his dad was doing some management, and he was overseeing his son working. And so he had to move this large stone. Liam was questioning if this was a real life story. I'm not talking about me and him. It's just a father, a son. I don't know their names. Anyway, the son was trying to move this rock, and the father was giving him some counsel and advice, as fathers love to do. Tell them how they're doing it wrong. Or how they would do it, how they could do it easier. I mean, I fall into that category of that's not the way I would do it. That's the hardest way possible. That probably won't work. Have you ever felt like that? You just want to lend some good advice to someone. Yeah. Anyway, so this father was talking with his son, and he said, "Are you using all your strength?" And he's like, "I'm using all my strength." And he's like, "Are you sure you're using all your strength?" And he's like, "I am sure I'm using all my strength." He's like, "Are you sure you're sure?" He went on to tell him, he's like, "I'm right here. You haven't asked me for help. Are you sure you're using all your strength?" We are leading up to a moment where what we cannot do, God's about to help us do. I wrote down a few things over the last few weeks, taking notes, and I just want to just touch them, for a moment. I'm not trying to re-preach other stuff, but I wrote this phrase down: relief, a temporary break on the way to a permanent fix. I love to hear God speak when people are talking. I hope you hear Him talking today and not just me. But I heard Him in that statement. And now I wrote all these notes down, and I'm going to confess, I am not the most organized note taker, and so I'm not sure where they all came from. So, I'm not trying to say they were mine. Hopelessness sucks out strength.
Yes, it does.
I heard this one. I think I remember who said this one. I'm not testing anyone. But this one was connection to people through trouble. Sometimes we have to be in the middle of something so that we meet someone. I met someone that I've never met before. I didn't know existed. I didn't know they were on the planet. But there was some trouble going on. I didn't know what the trouble was. I just was seeing the situation from afar. And my request to God is I want to be a person that can make that evil go away and rescue and save and help someone who cannot save themselves. And so this next phrase, I'm a bringer of relief.
Say it again.
I'm a bringer of relief. I could bring some relief. I had some ideas of how I could share the load, carry the load, give them a break, do something in the natural that would help. But it has to be on the way to that permanent fix. Fear can banish faith. But faith can banish fear. If you have your Bibles, which we already talked about that, you do, turn with me to 2 Kings. All right. You ever get so excited you flip right over it 15 times? All right, this is a verse that I have highlighted in all my Bibles. From a young child, I talked about this. But sometimes you read a verse and you read things you don't remember you've ever read before.
That's right.
So it's highlighted, but I didn't remember it. So I just want to share it with you. Nothing crazy. It just 2 Kings chapter 2 in verse 1. And in these first 7 verses, they were part of the story, but I never preached about them. So anyway, 2 Kings chapter 2 and verse 1, we're talking about Elijah and Elisha. They have been working together for quite some time. And one thing that is interesting is Elijah performed miracles. Yes, how many knows some of the miracles that Elijah performed? One of my more favorite was when he called down fire from heaven and the fire licked up the rocks and the water in the trench. And how many remembers that story? Yeah. You go from the most amazing church service ever to depression. That's how that one went. There was some opposition after he stood up for God. So there's some thoughts of what counting the miracles, right? Okay, so some people have different counts. This count that I am going with today is that there was 8 miracles that Elijah performed. In 1 Kings, there was no rain for 3.5 years. Then there was the meal and the oil failed not. These are the stories of the miracles that Elijah performed. He raised the dead, the widow's son. We talked about that a little while ago. Mount Carmel, he cleaned up all the prophets of Baal. That was right after the fire and the stones and all that. Then he prayed and rain was released. There was an army that was consumed, an anti-God army that was consumed. The first 50 were consumed by fire. And then there was the second wave of that army, God consumed, another 50 that were consumed. And then we're getting to this moment. And this miracle is where the Jordan was opened. We're going to read about that. But I want to just set up that there was 8 notable miracles that he performed. In verse 1 here, it says, "It came to pass when the Lord was about to take up Elisha into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went to Elisha from Gilgal. Then Elijah said to Elisha, 'Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me on to Bethel.' But Elisha said, 'As the Lord lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you.' So they went down to Bethel. Now the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came to Elisha and said to him, 'Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from you today?'" I had not put that phrase in my brain before. Everybody knew. I'm like, was this on the nightly news? Today, Elisha is going to heaven in a whirlwind and on a chariot of fire. Like, I thought it was supposed to be a surprise. Like, oh, your Uber's here. Like, no, they all knew. Just a new piece of information that I didn't know before. Then Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me on to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. Now the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho came to Elisha and said to him, "Do you not know that the Lord will take you?" Like, everybody knew. I didn't know. I'm sorry, I didn't know. So anyway, I had always read the more exciting part of the story. I'm like, couldn't he just got a lift where he was? Like, why did he have to go so far to get to the Uber? Anyway. "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me on to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, as your soul lives, I will not leave you." So the 2 of them went on. And 50 of the sons of the prophets went and stood facing them at a distance. And while the 2 of them stood by the Jordan, now Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up, and he struck the water with it. And it was divided this way and that way, so that the 2 of them crossed over on dry ground. So this was the 8th miracle that Elijah performed. And so it was when they had crossed over that Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask." He had already given him a few instructions. You know what's coming. You don't need to go to the dead end. You don't need to go do what you got to do. I'm leaving. But he stayed. He was faithful. Okay. So Elijah said, "Ask, what may I do for you before I'm taken away from you?" Elisha said, please. He had manners. Please, a double portion of your spirit be upon me. And so he said, as you have heard, you have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I'm taken from you, it shall be so. But if you don't see me, then it won't be. You have to stay all the way to the end. You got to see the exit to have the request. Yeah? So they begin walking along. And then it happened. As they continued on and talked, that suddenly a chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire, and they separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven, and Elisha saw it, and he cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen. And so he saw him no more. Now he took hold of his own clothes, and he tore them into pieces. And he also took up the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him. And he went back and he stood on the bank of the Jordan. I can't see my Bible because my bifocals are on. And he said, now where is the Lord God of Elijah? And when he struck the water, it was divided this way and that way. And Elisha crossed over. Now when the sons of the prophets who were there saw him, they said, the same spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha. And they came to meet him, and they bowed to the ground before him. What faithfulness affords. The request that Elisha had was, I want to do double of what you've done. Now, I think it's important you have to know what Elisha was there. He saw what he did, so he knew what he did. So he knew what double was. He knew what double was. Sometimes I don't know. I did this. This story was my story as a child. But I don't know. I was a child, so I knew as much as a child knows, okay? And I don't know if I really added up. I just thought Elijah just did thousands and thousands of miracles. I thought he just got up every day and it was another miracle, another miracle, another miracle. 2 a day. I don't know. In my mind, that's what I thought. That's what happened. And it almost, what's the impossibility of that, What was that statement? Fear can banish faith. Yeah. You could be set up for the miraculous, and fear and doubt can undo it before it even gets out the door. So, my prayer today is that as we are heading into this time of Pentecost, this time of God coming and pouring out His Spirit upon us, that we would have the ask prepared. What's the ask? Because suddenly, I don't know if you hear the parallels, in Acts, they were assembled together and there was a suddenly that took place. They had been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And then suddenly, Elisha had been following and following and following, and then suddenly that moment happened. God's timing. What am I in the meantime? I am a relief, a temporary break on the way to a permanent fix. for someone's life. All I can see is the face of this young boy that has been abused and hurt and neglected, and he is now in the care of someone who wants to help him, but he does not know how to receive that help. He doesn't know how to, the evil that has been done to him hinders the love and the protection that's been trying to give to him. The best I can do is temporary relief. Hey, I'll take him for a walk. I'll do something. I'll give you a break for a moment. You're doing a hard thing to care and love for this hurt child. But beyond that, my ask is that he would be made whole. That every horrible torment of memory that hurts him, and that he would be made free of that. I can't save him. I stood there, I didn't know what to do. I wrote some things down this morning, but I ask for a portion of the Spirit of God that I can speak to that evil and that hurt and that pain and that darkness, and I can bring relief and I can bring wholeness to his life. That's what I've been thinking about. That's my ask. I've been faithful, Lord. I've been here. I'm doing all that I know to do that is good, that is right, that is obedient. I want to do what's beyond my ability. What's your ask? We're coming into Pentecost. What is your ask? Your obedience and your faithfulness affords you the opportunity to ask. There was a group of 50 that didn't get to ask. They were on the other side of the river. They didn't go with him. There's going to be a group of people who won't be in the upper room, and they won't ask, and they won't have a suddenly. But if they were all in the upper room, we wouldn't need any of that, because everybody would have the Spirit of God. So God works. He's like, I'll have a small group. We'll get more done. Right? Because 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Isn't that how it works, right? And if you're 20% of the people, you know who you are. And the 80% are tired. In 2 Kings chapter 6, Elisha is now going on here. So Elisha begins, right? He's doing this. And so right then Elisha crosses over. I got it written down so I don't have to count, but we're counting. Then he healed the waters. We talked about that about a year ago, where they healed the waters. That everyone was getting sick. And so, and then this is an interesting one. I've never figured out how to fit this one into a message. But apparently Elisha was bald. And I think, sometimes you read your Bible and you're like, is this message worthy? Or, I'm not sure I really want to, I'm not sure I want to go there, That's a can of worms I'm not opening, And so anyway, one night Nate and I were talking and this miracle topic came up. And I don't know, he might have been reading it or whatever in his study. And so, yeah, there was these kids and they cursed and they were mocking and making fun of Elisha. And he cursed them and a bear came out of the woods and killed them all. Not one of the miracles that I'm looking to work on. Mainly because I really don't want to be bald. I just don't feel I can pull it off. So, it's like, yeah, I feel like if you're going to take some of the story, if you got to take the bad with the good, and I'm like, not going there, So, anyway. So that was number 3. Victory through water in a trench. That one was complicated a little bit, but interesting stuff. Then the son was given to the Shunammite woman. We talked about that a little while ago. We're getting there. Where are we going? We're going to 2 Kings chapter 6. Then there was the dead son that was raised. And then the poison pot was purified. Food was multiplied. Naaman, right? We're right in the thick of it now. Naaman was healed of leprosy. Then the leprous judgment on Gehazi. Gehazi didn't turn out like Elisha turned out. Then we talked about this a little while ago. Reverend Connie brought this one out. The axe head that floated. I have always wanted to preach on that. And I have never, it wasn't like the bald one, but I've just never really, you have to wait until God talks. Otherwise, we're just going to talk about the axe head floated, right? And that's where I was like, I'm sorry. I'd love to, but I don't feel like he's breathing on that one. So anyway, thank you for, yeah. I got a chainsaw, and I haven't dropped it in the water. So, anyway. Yeah. But here we are all the way to chapter 6 and verse 17, which is where I want to get to. 2 Kings chapter 6 and verse 17. So here we are, and we are at number 13, right? So remember, Elijah did 8. Elisha said, hey, I'd like to do double. Okay, and we're at 13. Elisha here is... There was some war happening over there. I don't know if you've ever heard about that. They haven't gotten along over there for a long time. And long time. This is not new. So the king of Syria was making war against Israel. Yeah. It's like that's been happening for a while. And the man of God sent the king to Israel, said, beware. And so anyway, there's this whole story of it's not going well. And there's this story going around, how do they know what's happening? It's like they know what's going on. It's like, who's telling our plans to the enemy? That's what the king is wondering. And so then, anyway, they're like, I want to talk to that guy because he's telling everybody the secrets in the bedroom. He knows and he hears, right? So they're talking about Elisha. So Elisha apparently was known on both sides. The enemy knew him, and so anyway, they came by night and they surrounded the city. Verse 15. And then when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city. How many likes to, get up and go for a little walk, and things are different than when you went to bed? So his servant said to him, alas, master, what shall we do? Yeah. So he answered, do not fear. Why is that the first thing? Well, because I heard fear can banish faith. And this might be a moment where we need some of that. Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And he thought, he failed math. This guy didn't, he flunked math. He flunked, because two, whole army. He can't count. That's what, he can't count. Yeah. Yeah, there's three kinds of people, those who can count and those who can't. And Elisha apparently, in the eyes of his servant, could not count. So Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. Now, I don't know how you want to count this. Elisha didn't ask for the army to be there. The army was already there. The host of heaven was already there. The miracle was the count, which takes us to 13 here, is that his servant saw what God was already doing. We're moving into a new time, and we know God's working, but we haven't seen him working. And I think that's I don't know, maybe I'll ask for two things. And this is my second ask, is that all of those that are God's servants, that they would see what God is already doing. And so Elisha prayed, verse 17. I know I wasn't doing very good. I was just telling you the story. I've read my Bible. It was kind of, anyway. Verse 17. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. And then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man. And when he saw, behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, and he said, strike this people, I pray, with blindness. So he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Now, this one, God was in place, ready to do what he was going to do. Elisha was there in faith, not in fear. He saw what God was capable of doing, and then he's like, well, being I got this guy seeing, how about we put them in the same position he was in? How about we put them where they can't see and they can't count? So I pray with them with blindness, and he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. That's what God did. Now Elisha said to them, so now they're there. Here's the whole army. Trouble. Woke up in the morning, trouble.
Yeah, okay.
And now they can't see. So now Elisha walks up to them and goes, this is not the way, nor is this the city. You're in the wrong place. Follow me, and I'll bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. Did they forget? They were blind and forgetful, because they just walked there. How did they turn blind and then they forgot where they had been? Maybe it was in the dark and they didn't know. I don't know. But what's impossible?
Nothing.
We got limiters, and we got boxes, and we got things that puts God in, and he's like, man, I can't fit in this little face. We can keep reading. It's all highlighted. It's all good stuff. But the point of this is, what is your ask? What does faithfulness afford you? It's an ask. I ask that all of us would see what God is doing. And that we would have the faith to go, you can mess up the enemy way faster than I think you could. What seemed like incredible opposition, do you understand? There was no bashing of swords, there was no fighting. He just led them away. God's deliverance looks different than how we think the fight of the enemy is going to go down. Sometimes we think, oh man, this is going to be a doozy. And God's like, light beats darkness every time. If you want to do it the hard way, use all your strength. But I don't think you're using all your strength if you don't ask me to help. So the army is defeated by blindness. Then the army's blindness is removed. Then, that's miracle 14 and 15. Pretty good stuff. All right, the ask. Philippians chapter 4 and verse 6. That's on page 1044. You can flip past Philippians many times. So I thought I'd give you the number. Because there is only one page that has the word Philippians on it. It's only on one side. Anyway. Philippians chapter 4 and verse 6, it says this. Well, verse 4 is circled and highlighted. We have to read that. Rejoice in the Lord always. When I don't want to. Because when you don't want to is the most important time to rejoice in the Lord. And again, I will say rejoice, because you probably did want to. Then let your gentleness be known to all men, that the Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. There's an ask that we are going to have the opportunity to give. I want you to be prepared for the ask. At Pentecost, a suddenly takes place. If we don't know what to ask, we may not ask for anything. If we don't ask for anything, then we won't receive anything. And so I want us to be prepared for that moment. Psalms 37 and verse 40, it says this, the Lord helps them and takes them out of trouble. He takes them away from the sinful and saves them because they go to Him for a safe place. How many's been there? How many wants to help someone else experience that process? In Deuteronomy 31, verse 8 says, the Lord Himself goes before you, and He will be with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. In John, 1 John, on page 1084, that's in my Bible. I'm sorry. I'm joking. Trying to be funny. 1 John chapter 5. 1084. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 14. Now this is the confidence that we have in Him, that if we ask anything according to His will, There's the qualification. I think back in my life of listening to churches all over the nation and what they were believing God for. And I thought Mercedes is, they had a picture of a Mercedes on the refrigerator. They were believing God for a Mercedes. And I thought, yeah, get a job, yeah. I did not. Here's my response to that. I don't need to believe God for money.
That's it.
He has given me the power to get wealth.
Correct.
I am not going to burn up my belief and my faith on something that He has already given me the ability to do.
Thank you.
They were trying to believe for something that they already had the power to go do, but the inactivity of the doing kept them in the place where God never answered their prayer.
That's it, right there. That's inactivity.
Anyway, that was not in the notes. Apparently that was free. According to His will. Thank you. Yes, that's where we were at. If what's your ask? Okay, the ask has to be according to what God's doing.
Thank you.
It has to be in the moment of the suddenly. It has to be, He is doing that. I see that little boy's face. And I want the suddenly moment where God touches him. I don't need anything.
Huh? Come on.
I don't need anything. God has blessed me. I don't need Him to fix any problems. If I clean up a mess, I can clean up a mess. I know when it's my mess, and I know when it's the devil. And when it's the devil, I got authority over the little bugger, But, man, when it steps into somebody else's life, and when evil has been done to someone else, and it's out of my situation, I have no authority in that moment. I'm over here, and God, I want to be there with you. That's the request.
That's upper room stuff.
Yeah. So, did we read all of it? I don't think we did. According to His will, He hears us. Maybe you've said, man, I prayed, God didn't. I don't think God hears me. It's possible that our prayers have been like those prayers looking for the Mercedes. God's like, that's not what I'm doing right now.
Not what I'm doing.
Sometimes my son and I, this one will be about us. Sometimes my son and I were working, and he will ask me not a bad question, not a unimportant question, but a question that is light years apart from what we're doing. Like, this is, that's so far from where we're at right now, my brain doesn't even know that exists. I probably know that, but I don't even know how to answer that question because I'm doing something else, right? I'm like, what are you doing? What are you thinking about while we're doing this? That's what your question is. Like, anyway. He hears us. And when we are working with Him and we're like, yeah, the rock, you see the rock? See that rock? Yeah, I can't move that rock, but I bet you if we work together, we can move this. So according to His will, He hears us. And if we, verse 15, and if we know that He hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have the petitions that we have asked of Him. So, you're standing there and you're like, God has to do something because salvation has to take place and I can't make it happen. But all of a sudden, the fear of, well, what if nothing happens? Or what do I do? Or just all of the thoughts in that moment of, what do I do? How do I change this? We have to know that He hears us. And we have to know that when we ask according to His will, we just take enough common sense to go, yeah, God would do that. He would do that. He would want to save him. So God, what do I do to help you do that?
That's it.
I know that you hear me, and I know that I already have what's needed to do that. So, Elisha is on 15. Requests that God honors. Elisha dies. He's still on 15. Now, we kind of already talked about that he had trouble with math. Well, maybe it wasn't 100% double. Maybe it was a decimal in there. You know, maybe it was 1.95 times. How many wants to jump back to 2 Kings? We're going to wrap this up today. I want to give you hope for the ask that you would ask and that you would have what you ask for, that you would be able to do what you see God wants to do in this earth. 2 Kings chapter 13. I went too far. 13 and verse 21. Verse 20, while you're turning there. Then Elisha died, and they buried him, and the raiding bands from Moab invaded the land in the spring of the year. It's not something I highlighted and feel like that was very exciting to talk about, but this is the story. Here we go. Verse 21, so it was as they were burying a man that suddenly they spied a band of raiders. And they put the man in the tomb of Elisha. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he received and stood to his feet. Number 16. What is our ask? God will honor this request that we are preparing for, that we are tarrying for, that we are counting up to. I think I've approached Pentecost in years past of, well, Lord, just whatever this is, I want to receive it, but I don't know if I have defined it. If you don't define what you're asking for, it's very possible you may not know that it's there. You miss it because you're not sure what you're looking for. How many's gone into a room and you know you're looking for something, but you can't find it, mainly because you forgot what was I in here looking for. I'm like, I know I came in here and I really needed something, but I am now distracted by all the things that are in here. I came to church, I forgot what I was looking for, and then I left and I don't remember. I didn't get nothing because I forgot what I came in there for. I don't want us to get to Pentecost and then God goes, ask, and we're like, well, whatever you got, Lord. And then we leave and we're like, doggone it, did I leave that on the chair? Shoot, I think I left that on the coat rack. Where? He gave me something. Right? So we're coming into this with good intention, with great anticipation, with expectation that what he is going to give us is the permanent fix to the temporary relief that we want to see happen in this earth. So God honors that request. Now, Elisha didn't even see it happen. He didn't get to count 16. He ended. I wonder what was his thoughts. Whew, this is the end. That was 15. Maybe he didn't know. I don't know. Maybe he didn't do the math. But the record just shows that God honored that.
Yes. I will do this.
And so as we ask according to the will of God these next 10 days, I think that's what we're doing. We're on the other side. We're in the upper room. We're in the moment of the ask, right? The ask happened before the suddenly.
Yes.
So if we're going to have the suddenly, we have to have the ask in anticipation of the suddenly taking place. So that's my prayer today, that you would define your ask, prepare your ask, and then ask it these next 10 days. And that it would be shaped and molded under the pretense of what is his will in this earth. And fully know that what you have need of, he provide that.
Yes.
This ask is two more thoughts. The song, I'm going to talk about the song, and then aroma. So remind me, these are not in my notes. So in prepping for this message, it's Friday or it's Thursday, and understand, it wasn't like I just started asking on Friday, right? In my portfolio is next month. I'm already writing down what's happening next month. I just start asking him, and then I have an open line, because at any moment he could tell me something. So anyway. I heard this song. It's an older song. It may be younger to some people than others. I don't know. But the phrase in there, ask, and I'll give the nations to you. It's the cry of my heart. I looked at that and I thought, nations, God, that's a lot of people. That add that number up. Nations, plural. God's not limited. But I see that little boy as a nation. Because he's not the only one that suffers from that same thing. And I want to see him made free. So that's my ask, God. I want to not just relieve him. I don't want him to just have a permanent fix, but I know that there are hundreds and thousands just like him, probably in our own county, that are in the same condition, that cannot get free themselves. Only God can. We were going home from church. It must have been Mother's Day. We were talking about aromas. And I had this thought of, how do you describe an aroma? In the spring, there's many nice fragrances. The lilacs, the wisteria. I go and I smell them. I make an intentional because I know they're only going to last for just a 12-day window, and then they won't be there for another year, So I go and we have some roses. I stop and I smell the roses too, And So I was by myself and I was smelling the wisteria, and I wanted to share that with my wife, but she didn't smell it. So I had to explain a smell. You can't see a smell. You can't touch a smell. You can't hold a smell. You can only smell a smell, right? But I'm trying to explain to her what it is. I've never smelt it before, so I have to tell her about other things that she already knows for her to experience it. How do you explain an aroma? Well, it smells like grapes. It smells like a soft lemon, right? Whatever you want to describe, you know? So, I want to tell you about God. I don't have a word that explains that. I'm going to have to tell you about something that you already know that is like Him to help give you the feel. It's never quite as good as me sticking my face in the lilac bush and just... I took Olivia to the lilac bush when she was like 3, and I'm like, smell this. And she wasn't close enough to probably smell anything, And she closed her eyes and she goes, fresh. We immediately begin to try to describe God. What does God do and what does He mean to you? How do you describe it? I took Michaela to the lilac bush and I said, smell this. And I told her, I said, this makes my heart happy. So now she's like, makes me happy. How we introduce something to someone is how they will then perceive it and understand it. That's a strange smell. Pentecost. That's weird. That's where they got them tongues things. I don't think they had a request, and I'm not sure they experienced it. I'm not looking to speak in tongues. If I need to speak in tongues, it's for one purpose. I want to send a secret code that the kingdom of darkness has no idea, and it's encoded message to the angel armies of God going, hey, I'm working with you. But that's not even the tongues that they got then. The tongues they got then was, ask, and I'll give you the request when it's in my will. They heard the gospel preached in their language. Now, it just happened that that time was obviously the feast, and they were all gathered together, and they all spoke different languages, like, I don't know any of those languages, right? I know French, English, Spanish, German. If you want to speak German, just sound mad. I get Wagenschlagen, Just say things like you're frustrated and you can speak German.
Something that you don't want to eat.
Volkswagen Hagensagen. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's Haagen-Dazs. It's like ice cream. Why are you mad about ice cream? Chill out. Can we speak in the language that causes them to hear the good news? Not without the Spirit of God. Because then if we don't have the Spirit of God, it will just sound like empty, just religious stuff that they've heard before that didn't fix the problem. It may have not even brought a temporary relief. So, what are we asking for? I want to be able to speak and articulate what God is doing because I see what He is doing. I see that He's already prepared. And I don't have to try to convince God to do His will. Elisha didn't have to pray, oh Lord, 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 Lord. There's an army. It's all around us and we're surrounded. If you could, if it be your will to get up out of heaven and come down. How many times have we heard prayer like that, and how many times have people heard prayer like that and thought, those Christians are idiots? They don't know God. That's not God. Nothing is happening. I want to ask according to His will so that I might be part of what He's doing, that I might see what He's doing, that I might work with what He's doing. So, Father, today I thank You as we live this way. This is a new way of living. I found a new way of living. It's divine. It's above walking in the flesh. It's above the natural. It's above what I could imagine. You want to do greater than I could ask or think. And so, God, I'm asking that You would allow me to be part of what You're doing, that this earth would be changed. That a nation of people, a person makes up a nation. So at one person at a time, God, I want to be part of how You're touching, changing, delivering, saving, healing, letting them know what You're doing. So Father, we put to paper our ask. We rewrite down, we speak it, we declare it, we ask it so that You would know this. Out of the abundance of our heart, our mouth would speak, God. So I thank You that out of the abundance of what we see in this earth that is needed, God, that we would then ask, well, God, I want to find Your solution to that need. So Lord, I thank You today that our faithfulness affords us this request. It's put us in the position to ask. It's put us in the place where we get to ask. Some people never get to ask, but God, I thank You we're in that place where we get to ask. And so God, I thank You that this request that's going to happen from all of us in the next 10 days, this is a request that You are going to honor, just like Elisha's request. 16. He made it all the way to double. I thank You that in the timing and in the plan that You have, God, that the fulfillment of this request, it will be honored. We thank You, Father, that this word, we hear it and that it comes alive to us. That this celebration, this anticipation of this feast is not just a story that's happened before, something in the past, but there is a thing that You're doing right now in this moment. And God, we want to reach into that. I don't want to reach in and repeat history. I want to reach in and make history. I want to be the one that they're writing the story about. Peter went out and he preached the gospel. I want the good news of what You want to do to be heard. And everyone in agreement with that? Amen. So be it. Let's do it. How many is anticipating that God is already answering and preparing to fulfill these requests? Amen. Praise God. Well, the altar call is write it down, have it ready so that put your requests in. Requests. I got 2. I don't know. You can have as many as you want. Whatever your faithfulness can buy. Yeah, whatever you feel you have the right to ask in His will, write it down and declare it every day. You know, what's being in the upper room? Oh, Lord, I'm just waiting for you. Every day we're just letting God know what our request is. We're here to work with Him, and He's going to honor that request. Amen.